Urban Minds is a nonprofit organization with a mission to create meaningful ways for youth to shape equitable and sustainable communities. The One Up Conference is our annual flagship event as part of our One Up Youth program, which is intended to educate and engage high school students across Ontario about all things city building and community building. So, at this conference that we host every year, we invite professionals from the architecture, design, engineering, planning, construction sector to come in as speakers, as facilitators, as volunteers to mentor our students, to introduce them to these career paths and to get them started on a path to learning about these different topics and hopefully getting involved in these various issues. And maybe one day we'll have a generation of new designers, planners, architects, and what have you. And the design jam as part of the conference is a key part of the events where we partner with an organization or an agency, this year being the TTC, to have a real world problem with a real world site for the students to generate creative and innovative ideas.
I was really excited to talk to you about this. It's signaled to me a bit of a shift from purely adult-led urban planning to something that could be youth-driven. So if we consider something like the user experience gap, I know the students were tasked with redesigning bus stops and subway platforms. In your opinion, what were some of the biggest pain points they identified that industry professionals might have overlooked?
Yeah, so some of the pain points that the students I've identified in their pitches at the events was really the connectivity when it comes to when would the next bus arrive or when would the next subway train arrive to them. I think because especially because they're living in this era of digital media and information. They are expecting the same level of quickness and information for them when it comes to planning their trips and knowing when the next train or bus would arrive. So, a big part that stood out to me was meeting where they are in terms of the information that they like to receive at
Yeah.
the subway platform or the bus stops or streetcar stops. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect that I thought stood out to me was the consideration of sustainable features. So a lot of them incorporated things like solar panels or green roof features. Again, being the generation that unfortunately has to deal with the impact of climate change, they're very much thinking about how can we make our infrastructure work harder in terms of fighting climate change.
Yeah, that makes total sense. How were participants selected? Were they submitted? Did they volunteer? Did they apply?
Yeah, so they sign up on their own. It's an event that's free and open to all high school students in Ontario. So it's essentially an Eventbrite page that we have. We promote through social media, through teachers and schools and word of mouth. And they sign up on their own and they participate in teams that we assign on the day of. And they're working with strangers, friends that they've just made and met and working together to come up with ideas. And through that, we're really just trying to mimic the working environment that they would grow into in the future, especially in the planning, design, and construction field, a very collaborative environment. And so we want to get them to start getting used to working in that way.
Yeah, I was going to say, just like the real world. the
Exactly.
the winning team, who I think was a platform of the future, they
Mhm.
used cost-effective retrofits and existing Canadian tech. How important do you think it is for the next generation to focus on working with what we already have rather
Mhm.
than building net new?
Yeah, I think there are two sides to that. First, being again, back to the issue of sustainability and climate change. It's obviously more climate friendly if we don't need to use new materials. It takes up less resources in order to build something if we already have something in place. Repurposing what we already have is always more sustainable. The other aspect of it is cost. As we know, the TTC is a public agency that chronically let's just say, chronically struggles with funding. And so a big part of the evaluation criteria for this design jam for the competition was how can we uh, use these spaces, use this piece of infrastructure to also be a revenue generation tool, a cost
Hmm.
recovery tool. And so these were both prompts that we've provided to our students, and I think the winning team did a great job in incorporating those
Hmm.
considerations.
That's amazing. I know the conference explored making transit safer and especially more inclusive.
Mhm.
What specific design features did the students propose to help vulnerable users like new Canadians, families, and to feel more comfortable in those public spaces?
Yeah, so I think one of the features that stood out to me from the presentations, from the pitches, was having displays that include information in different languages. So right now, all the announcements on the TTC and information that we see on signage are in English, maybe in rare cases in French, but there are many ethnic and multicultural communities living in Toronto, a lot of newcomers, new Canadians living in the city, and so English may not be their first language. Having important information shared with them in their own language is something that makes the experience a lot more inclusive and accessible.
Mhm. No, that makes perfect sense. You had, I think it was almost 200 students. They got to speak to architects, planners, housing advocates, etc. What is the biggest misconception that high school students have about entering architecture, engineering, and construction
I
fields?
think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's just one monolith of a career path, that architects do all the designing and building of stuff that they see in the city, when in fact there are so many different career pathways and so many different sub streams, so to speak, when it comes to different sectors and career paths. One primary goals of this event is to introduce this variety of different career paths to our students so that they know, based on their own interests and their strengths, that there's always something for them, and they discover jobs and career paths that they've never heard of before from the professionals that they meet, the volunteers who interact with them, and open up new possibilities for them when they're considering what post-secondary pathways could look like for them.
Hmm. Hmm. And in your mind, how can the big players in Toronto construction better support these students and the student chapters? I know you have about 20 municipalities
Mhm.
to ensure that we have that really skilled and passionate workforce 10 years from now.
There are many ways to do so. I would say the first is through supporting events like our conference and initiatives where students, high school students, get the opportunity to see what it's like to work in these settings, to get a glimpse of these workplaces. What does a day in the life look like for architects, designers, planners, engineers, tradespeople, etc., to have them really understand what it takes, or rather, what are the prerequisites to arrive in these career paths, how they could get started. For architecture, for example, one of our workshops with Raw Design, they actually did a portfolio workshop to help students understand what are some of the things to look out for when they're building that first portfolio for their university application. So
Mhm.
things like that is immensely helpful for high school students who just don't know where to start. And some high schools actually offer co-op programs, and they work with the industry to match students to these companies or to these organizations for co-op positions. A lot of these companies, I think they're taking a chance, right? Like high school students are, because of their age, inexperience. So there's a lot to teach, there's a lot to train, but I think this conference and really our whole program can show our partners in the industry that high school students are very capable if you invest the time and the energy to train them, to introduce them
Yeah.
to these career paths. And finally, the third thing I would say is the actual consultation or the engagement process of the projects that our partners do. When it comes to the planning or the design of a site, of a project, there's often a public consultation or a community engagement process. And you always see the usual suspects, right? At these
Yeah.
open houses and public meetings. How can we make the effort to reach youth so that their voices are heard? And the design jam at our conference is one example of where a willing partner, the TTC, really spent the time to listen to youth and to give feedback and to take them back to their teams to consider those ideas,
Mhm.
hopefully for implementation in the future.
Do you have access to data that reflects maybe the ratio of boys to girls who attended? I only ask because I've been doing a lot of work with industry leaders
Mm,
around getting women into the trades, getting women into the AEC space, the difficulties with not just recruitment but
mhm.
retention, and how it has to start at a young age. I don't want to genderize
Yes.
the conversation. I don't want to make it about that, but
No.
it just popped up in my head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem at all. I know it's been an issue, an ongoing issue with our industry that there is not enough diverse representation, whether that's gender or ethnicity. With our program since 2022, when we've been tracking our participants, we have roughly two-thirds of our participants identifying as female. And so
Wow.
yeah, yes, exactly. So it's
Wow. That's
really like
impressive.
we don't intentionally, go look out for girls and young women to be part of our program. But I think
Yeah.
naturally, and I'm tuning my own horn here,
Go
because
ahead.
the program is designed to be accessible, designed to be
Mhm.
catered to our youth. And we listen to our youth volunteers and team members to make it as accessible and appealing as possible. It doesn't feel like this is only a boys kind of
Yeah.
sector, right? And so I'm very proud to say that our participants are two-thirds female and roughly 80% plus BIPOC. Hmm.
Great. Well, I'm very impressed. And you should toot your horn. And we'll do it for you as well.
Thank you.
Um, you touched on this earlier
Mhm.
about the design jam being in that high stakes, high pressure environment and sort of mimicking the real world. Are there other ways that you think that that environment mimics those pressures of like hitting transit deadlines and managing complex logistics, and especially
Mhm.
in a city like Toronto, for sure?
Right. Yeah, so as part of the design jam, we provide our students personas. And so these are fictional characters that reflect the real demographics of the customer base, of the real passengers and users of the TTC. And so they come from all walks of life. We have the remote tech worker or a single mother with kids and everyone in between. Users who use streetcars versus subway versus bus or all of the above. And the intention of having those personas as part of the design jam is so that it helps our students empathize with those that they don't normally come across or encounter in their daily lives. They understand, at least within those hours that we have with some of the different experiences that people have in the city, and therefore be able to design spaces that are suitable and accessible to those folks. So they're not just thinking about, oh, what would the best bus stop for a high school student, because naturally they're thinking from their own perspectives. Personas help bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm. And I would expect that working with like such a massive agency like the TTC, it's a big deal for you and for the students. What was
Mhm.
the most surprising piece of feedback that maybe the TTC judges gave the students regarding the buildability or the viability of their prototypes?
I think for again, like such a large agency like the TTC, the word innovation may not come across people's minds immediately, but that is actually the mandate of the team that we work with at the TTC. They are very much innovation focused. They're always looking for new ways to improve the customer experience. And I know through other collaborations that they have with different universities in the city, there is that focus on hearing from youth, hearing from the next generation about what the future transit experience could look like. And so To me, it's not surprising, maybe not surprising, but impressive nonetheless that a legacy agency like the TTC is putting so much effort into innovating.
Hmm. Hmm. That makes sense. This is the 10th annual One Up conference.
Yes.
So looking back to the first one, how has the student vision for Toronto changed? Do you think they're more focused on technology now, or is it more about social connection, community hubs?
Mhm. Ooh, uh, I think the fundamentals don't really change. Like
Yeah.
as young people, as teenagers, they're always looking for social connection, looking for a greater sense of belonging, looking for their place in the society, in the city. And I think their ideas reflect that. What have changed over the years would be maybe more of the macro trends that we're seeing. I was surprised that AI didn't really come into the picture this past weekend. I was kind of expecting it, but it
Hmm.
didn't, which maybe is a surprising insight in of itself. I think there is a general sense of maybe caution among this younger generation towards technology and how that's going to really transform the way they live and the way they work. We're
Hmm.
seeing it ourselves in our workplaces, and I think they're
Yeah.
just not quite sure what to expect. And that obviously wasn't part of the conversation 10 years ago. So that's one thing. The other thing I would share as well, and maybe not directly through this past weekend's conference, but some more broader trend is that I think youth are more and more concerned about affordability and about cost of living, and job security. And I think we find that as event planners for youth that we're also getting a lot more interest as to how can I prepare a better resume? How can I get ahead when it comes to starting my career? I would say that hasn't been such a strong focus when we first started. We started out really more so from the angle of how can we equip more active, informed citizens.
Hmm.
That's still important, but I think that economic uncertainty that youth are facing right now does take a toll on their way of thinking. And some of the broader issues like climate, social justice, I wouldn't say they take a
Hmm.
back seat, but I think they become part of a broader set of issues and topics that youth are
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming. It's interesting your notes about your findings in terms of AI or technology adoption and trying to find their place.
about. Hmm.
They seem almost antithetical to what we've been fed about today's youth and how they're all so technology focused and there's no sense of place in the world. So that's refreshing. I think that's a very refreshing lens
Hmm.
to see them through. So I guess one of my last questions to you is: do you think that there's a path for these student designs, like the real-time passenger counters or tactile wayfinding, to actually be piloted on Toronto
Hmm.
streets? What's that
I
process?
I mean I can't speak on behalf of the TTC or on behalf of the city, but I do know, and maybe you're aware of this already, that the city of Toronto is currently doing public consultation for their street furniture program. The city's renewing their contract, I believe, next year. Don't quote me on that.
Hmm.
Um, but that's part of the reason why the TTC was so keen on using this design challenge for our event because it is a timely conversation, and the the judges, the panelists from the TTC who were at our event reviewing the students' ideas and giving feedback. I know that they've been taking like they took pages of notes from the pitches, and they did tell me that they are going to share that with their colleagues both at the
Mm,
TTC and the city. So no promises, as you know how things go, but
yeah.
I'm really hopeful and optimistic that they're at least going to be considered and
What
aligned
a great
with the
springboard.
expectations. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. And what's next? What's coming up? Anything you
Mhm.
would want our readers to know?
Yeah, so this summer we will be partnering with different firms and organizations to host office tours in the GTA, Kitchener, Waterloo, and Hamilton.
Wow.
So stay tuned, subscribe to our newsletter, and follow us on
Yeah.
social media at Urban Minds TO to find out more about these tours. These are all free events where, again, high school students get to visit these offices and studios to see what it's like to be a professional in these fields.
That's
And
so cool.
in September, that's when we would launch a new pitch competition. More details to come, but it is a pitch competition focused on the theme of climate justice, where high school students can work in teams or individually to pitch an idea to address the very urgent and critical topic of climate justice.